All right, why don't we get started and have a look at what we have for today, which is we're now in week 14, and week 14 is one of your two catch-up weeks, right? So you have 14 and 15 to catch up to finish your final project, turn in any missing assignments, so nothing new, except I will tell you a little bit something. Well, no new assignments, but I will tell you a little bit about how to make an Android app and why would you want to make an Android app with Java.
Why would you?
Yeah.
Security.
Also because everything in Android was written in Java. Okay, just so you know. All right, so if you're going to write something in iOS, you're not going to be writing it in Java, but if you're going to be writing something in Android, you're going to be writing it in Java. And what's Android?
Cell phone.
It's an operating system. And what kind of an operating system is it? Do you know? Linux. All right, yeah. So Android is a Linux operating system. Google bought them, or they bought Android. Nobody really owns Linux. And the programs the programming language that we use to write these apps for Android is Java. And Android is what percent of the market share? Do you know? 80-something%. Yeah. So if somebody around the world has a smartphone, 85% chances they have an Android. That being said, iOS developers usually get paid more. FYI.
iOS
Okay.
gets paid more.
Yeah. If you're a developer for Apple, for iOS, you would make probably a little bit more than Android developers. But there's going to be more likely there's going to be more demand for Android apps. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I have some stat. Yeah.
So in terms of the apps that are developed, quantized, right?
The number of apps.
There's more apps for Android than there is.
Yes. There's more apps for Android than iOS, and they surpassed them in maybe 5 years ago. Yeah, for in the beginning when Android was just starting, and actually you can look at this chart right here, right? The market share of the operating systems, and this is only up to 2011. I got to update this really, but in the very beginning, Android didn't have that many apps. And as soon as pretty much Google took over it, it exploded, and in just a few years' time, it had the same number of apps. It's had way more than that now. But I guess you could say the quality control, or it's kind of easy to post your Android apps on the Play Store, versus if you're trying to post an app for the iOS, they're a lot more strict in selecting what you can post. Okay. So anyway, there's an Android developer's website which allows you to download the Android Sdk, right? So if you look at Android developer website, it will get you started. So you can, okay. So it has basically some examples on how to get started. And when I went through this, it was several years ago. What they were using was Eclipse, okay? But now they don't. See the SDK. All right, so this is your Android Developer Studio. So you can download Eclipse and set it up, configure it to write your Android apps, or you can just download this thing which is already pre-configured and write your apps in it. So basically, this is going to have a virtual simulator. You don't really have to have an Android phone to write apps for Android. This will simulate an Android with a different screen size. You can tell it what screen is your device, or what size is your device, etc., etc. And then you write and you test your apps in here. Of course, it's a lot nicer if you have an Android phone and you can plug it in and you can run the apps on that thing. And yeah, it's pretty cool to be able to write your own apps. That's all I have to say. You no longer have to rely on the mercy of somebody to give you some tool which you can easily write yourself, right? One of the first things that I did when I first got my Android, which was one of the earliest Androids, didn't even have a button to turn on the flash. I just wrote an app to turn on the flash for me. There was an app that you can download, but the app was always advertising things on the bottom, so it was using up my data, and I'm pretty sure it was sucking up, getting information from me and sending it to someone else. I didn't want that, so I just wrote my own app. So you can write apps relatively easily in here, and the project that I have made here as an example is that app. Okay, so it might be a little bit dated, but the idea behind making an Android app is pretty much the same. Anyway, so you download the studio, you install it, and then you can start writing apps in it. And you're going to notice that even though these are Java programs, they don't really follow the same way or layout of our standard Java programs up to this point. Our programs so far used a main, right? There was a public static void main, and the ones in Android don't have that, right? They don't have a main. They have a different place that basically serves as a main. As soon as the app gets started, or as soon as you open up the app, it's in there. There's some other interesting things about the iOS, the operating system that runs these Android apps. Like closing apps is not really necessary. You just kind of minimize them, or you don't. As long as you look at some other app, you don't have to keep closing the apps. The operating system will automatically shut it down at some point. So like close and minimize and these kind of things are really not like some of the things that we worry about. So now let's look at some of the things that I have in here. So another thing is the GUI. The GUI that we have been doing up to this point can be done for Android apps. So you can, create a window and then throw a button object in it, and you can do all those different things that we've been doing up to this point. But as soon as you start doing that stuff, and if your IDE is as good as Eclipse, I honestly haven't played around with this new one that they used. And by the way, the new one that they're using is this thing right here. Pretty much it will look like that. It's this IntelliJ idea. Right? It's basically like CLion. If you use CLion for C++, it's the same developers. They also make PyCharm and a bunch of other ones. So anyway, yeah. So in this thing, it's similar to this. I actually have the Pro version, which you can also get with your student email. Similar to this is your Studio, right? It's just an IntelliJ IDE that is simplified and customized for Android. So anyway, in there, when you create a new project, what's going to happen is, we'll create something like this, right? So you're going to have like a little screen. You tell it how big the screen is when you set up the project. And in here, what I was going to do is I'm just going to have like a little icon and a button, right? So that's all there is in my little project. Okay? And the way this is going to be set up is it's going to be set up in an XML file, right? So if you see this here, right? So this is edit text. This edit text is this text box right here on the bottom, right? The one that says press button to activate LED. That's my edit text. And in it, right? So all it is basically it's like an HTML file. It's not an HTML file, it's an XML file. And what's an XML? Well, it's can't remember what it stands for. Extended Markup Language. There you go. So it's basically like an HTML. It could be used as an HTML, and that's how they're using it in this case, right? What's HTML? If you don't know, it's the hypertext markup language that you use to tell the browser how to place things on the screen, what colors the text, new lines, and all that good stuff, right? So just you telling the browser how things are going to look. It's not a programming language, just like this here. This is not a programming language. It's like a place where we're going to store a bunch of information. What information are we going to store? Well, how the GUI is going to look, right? So we're telling it it's going to use this linear layout, right? We're going to have a text box, then we're going to have a button, and then in there, you're actually telling it what are the properties for this text box, right? What is the width? What is the height? What is the text box? What is the text on the button? What is the text in the text box? So. And then what the program is going to do is it's going to simply look at this XML file and then build the GUI from it. So it actually simplifies it. All right? The making of GUIs comes down to and by you I mean it's a lot of it is drag and drop. If you can see in here, right? You want a button, you drag the button on top of this little thing here on the canvas, and then you have a button, right? And then as soon as you do that, then it will create this little button field in your XML file, and then when your program starts, you just tell it, okay, load the GUI that's in this particular file, and then it appears. So it's simplified. Also, the convention is to be storing all your strings into a separate files. So instead of me writing the actual message, the do it or whatever, or press the button to activate LED, I have that in some kind of a edit message, which is stored in a file, in an XML file called string, I think, somewhere in there. Okay, I can't remember the exact name for the file, but it's something called string. So basically, we're telling it, look at the file that has all the strings, and in it, there's going to be a variable called edit message, and that edit message is actually going to be equal to this press the button to activate LED. Okay, so it's kind of like organizing things in separate places. So this is the GUI. Any questions on this? Okay. All right. So yeah, I was saying that these strings, like button send is a string, edit message is a string, right? These are all going to be saved in a file called strings, right? And I showed it in here. So it's an XML file, which is basically just a place where you can organize information in some way, right? So and these are not even necessarily reserved words. I'm just saying, okay, there's going to be, in this XML file, there's going to be a section called resources. It starts here and it ends there, right? And in that section called resources of the strings XML file, we're going to have all different strings. So these are the variable names. This one is app name, this one is edit message, button send, blah, blah, blah. And these are the values, right? So in Java code, you would say string app name equals quote, quote, flashlight, right? Does that make sense? So that's where all the strings are stored for all the different labels you're going to have. And your program starts in a file called mainActivity.java, okay? And then in there, you're going to import a bunch of different things that you need to use. In my case, I imported some package called, I'm creating a package called flashlight. In it, I'm going to need to use the camera and some other things that are part of the operating system, right? Maybe a menu and different ways to look at the thing. So I'm importing all the different libraries or packages that I need for my program to run. And this onCreate is where the program starts, right? So I have a public class main activity extends activity, right? You're familiar with that terminology at this point, right? You know how the Gooeys extend something extends something, right? So this main activity class extends some class called activity, and in it, the activity class has a method called onCreate, and that is basically your main, right? This is the public static void main, the onCreate, right? So this thing gets called as soon as the whole thing, as soon as you open the app, this gets called, and then what are we going to do? I think this piece right here, set content view or layout activity main. Activity main is this right here, right? So this is activity main. So this is the GUI, and then the first thing that I say in my program is load activity main. So that's it. That's how you create a GUI in an Android. It's actually simpler to do it this way than having to create a bunch of windows manually with the code. Okay. And then after that, I basically just change some things, open the camera, and do some different things. Okay. So yeah, you can set it up. You can tell it to do a menu, and this is the button clicked method, right? So this is going to react whenever you click a button, right? And all I'm going to do in there is I'm going to tell it to turn on the flash and turn off the flash. Okay, and some of these things I didn't know. I had to look up, or how do you tell the camera on Android to turn on? Right? It's in there. It's in the documentation somewhere. Okay, do you have to remember it? No, I don't care. Right? But the important thing is the concepts that we learned about making a GUI can be very easily applied to making an Android app. Okay, and if you're done with the final project, maybe you can work on that. You can, or if you, instead of the final project, if you want to do an Android app for tic-tac-toe, knock yourself out. You can do that too, right? And there's other things you can do with Java. It's a full-blown enterprise language. You can use it to write server application. You can use it on the server. You can use it on the client side for applets, right? So there's servlets, there's applets. So this language can, you know, can do pretty much whatever you want to throw at it, right? You want to do encryption, you can do that with Java. You want to do data structures, you can do data structures very easy with Java. So it's a very, you know, it's like a jack of all trades. I really like Java. Oh, and then one more thing is, so that's the main activity.java. So that's the file where your main is basically, except it's not called main, it's called onCreate. And other than that, there is a manifest file. And in this thing, this is similar to the manifest that you had to do in your jar file, if you remember the jar file. And in the manifest file, you tell it what's where basically and what the different permissions are. That's the main use for this, right? So you have to allow the application, the app that you're creating, to have certain permissions on your device. And that's where you set up these permissions in the manifest file. Okay, so that in a nutshell is making an Android app. And if you really want to play around with this, which I highly recommend, then go download the Android Studio, right? Then start with this here. So I have links to both of these inside my my file in here, right? The Android SDK is here, and the Android developer's website. So the Android SDK takes you to this to download that, and the other one here, I would just start with build your first app, and you know, we'll walk you through it, right? Create an Android project, right? And this is all on how you would be doing this in the JetBrains software, right? JetBrains makes this IDE, okay? As far as Eclipse, there's some older guides out there for Eclipse also, and but since they're showing you how to do this in this IDE, I would probably just use that, right? Just to get started, and then you know, once you're comfortable using this to get a program going, then you can try to, you know, accommodate or use Eclipse instead. Okay, and it kind of tells you what are the different things in there. What's the main activity? What's the activity main? What's the Java? What are these different files, right? And you know, and so on and so on. So they're really, I mean, I really liked the way they have set up their, you know, getting started with this. So if you want to enhance your knowledge of Java, jump to doing some Android apps. Okay. Yeah.
Is it pretty exhaustive to test it in the IDE? Is that sufficient?
I mean, you don't need a device to test them, but I would really personally prefer to test it on a real device just to see it. You know, also to see it allows you to simulate the device size, what brand it is, what version of Android it's using. So you can pretty much fine tune it to whatever you want, but to me, I would like to see it on a real device. Yeah, and you can also do, by the way, Android is not just on smartphones; it's on tablets too. So yeah. Okay, and also Chromebook. No, isn't that Android?
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's what I wanted to tell you about Android and all that good stuff. Yeah, so that's pretty much the end of what I want to tell you in this class. Next week, I'm not going to do anything new. I'll be here, but no new content. So if you need help with anything, know where to find me. Yeah.
You'll have class?
I'll do all my regular classes next week, all my normal hours next week, and then week 16 also no classes because it's finals week, but I'll be in my office. I'll just camp there for the duration of my class and the office hour, even though I'm not supposed to have office hour on that week, but I'll do it if you need me. I'll be there. In the class time, because the classes get moved around, like some other class might have a final during our regular scheduled time, during finals week, which is week 16, I'll just be in my office. Yeah. And if there's too many students, we can move the conference to the conference room as usual. Okay, so yeah, that's Java in a nutshell. And next thing that I would recommend you take is the 26, right? Oh, sorry, 27, CSIS27, which is the data structures. We do more complicated things with Java, a lot more interesting things. And also 46, which is the C++ data structures. I would also recommend doing that too. If you have a choice between 46 or 27, so one is data structures with C++, the other one is data structures with Java, and you have the time, I would do data structures with C++ and then data structures with Java. If you want to do them both at the same time, it could be done. Right? If you have done CSIS 45 and this class, you can do both the 46 and 27 at the same time. Right? And they'll actually complement each other, but it will just be better on your brain to give it more time to digest the information. So, yeah. Any questions, comments, concerns? All right. I will post the video and look for your questions.